Welcome everyone to another breaking news here of Intel's broken stuff. Another video I didn't expect and plan to make, and actually I would want to sit here and say everything's amazing. Skies are rainbows, unicorns and stuff, and everything's amazing. By that everything is amazing. But unfortunately here with my Epic Threadripping Ryzen AM5 GB Aorus X670E, I have to say it is one of the most time-wasting #peakbugs products I ever had. It's not even AMD's fault, it's mostly Gigabyte's BIOS. The AMD Ryzen works amazing, performance and stuff, 50% faster, building Hulu solution in 2 hours, less than 2 hours. If not, but if it were for the BIOS and firmware and also surrounding vendors and even Intel, it's like 2022, even Intel manages to ruin the PC party here because my integrated Ethernet NIC stopped working, right? And I didn't pay too much attention, and I don't even know when and why it failed. So the issue is I want to use freaking Ethernet, right? For 20 years I use freaking Ethernet, and I love freaking wired Ethernet. That shit just freaking works here. But I now work over Wi-Fi. 2022, I work over Wi-Fi for some days because my bloody wired Ethernet NIC doesn't work anymore, right? And so this is IGC. I was previously already complaining there. Even Intel 5 or how many 8, 10 different NICs. I mean, what is wrong with those companies like having one or like, let's say every decade, like in the meantime 3 NICs, but no, even Intel has a couple of different incompatible NICs. Why do they need to change the hardware interface? And the problem with that is for each bloody NIC, network interface card, you need another driver, right? And so when I unboxed it, it was working. It was glitchy. I mean, it was one of the things, the AMD CPU is super amazing, thread ripping every single way, right? But this particular board has at least some USB glitches. And from the very first video, right, say on my More channel, I had the issue that this built-in Ethernet NIC was glitchy, and I was at times even using the bloody USB-C dongle because from the very first day it was glitchy, and then it stopped working entirely. So the issue is now NVM checksum is not valid, and then that is in non-volatile memory there. And usually you only have the MAC address there, the unique network identifier, and so now this fails to probe this error because the checksum is not valid. With the checksum, actually I changed that. I believe as you see here, this is some Intel Ethernet flashing thing that does not have that support. The client Voxville with freaking empty flash, right? Do I even show that? Maybe I should sometime check what I freaking show here. So that is the issue, right? PCI Def ID 15FD. Update not available. It's like, yeah, thank you very much. So what is the issue here? So I don't even know when it failed. Maybe it is related to the BIOS update, which the new BIOS update, total mess, right? I have to say, people blame me for Asus and stuff, like, I don't know, right? So basically, to summarize that, in 2022, not only Ethernet does not just work. Out of the box, it was glitchy, and now it stopped working entirely. I have no idea why the freaking NVM non-volatile memory cleared there. Maybe it is related to BIOS update, I don't know, but also the BIOS update should not ruin that. And if the BIOS update is touching that, it should just freaking flash it, right? So in the meantime, I don't expect a BIOS update to just reinstate that, because in the meantime, I like back and forth flashed the bloody BIOS like 5 or 6, 7 times because the new BIOS is such an unstable mess. Maybe something of the unstable BIOS shit somehow clobbered that. I don't know. But what I also, so here's also previously in previous reporting 2 years ago of like stuff that even I don't know, right? Even if you are a kernel developer, you're in the industry, you don't need to get everything. So actually this Intel Voxville i225V 2.5 gigabit Ethernet networking issue is actually an industry known thing, right? There previously 2 years ago were issues that this was like 2020, right? 20 or 30 probably 30 years after the invention of Ethernet, like Intel couldn't even, like their CPUs, right? Spectre, Meltdown, and everything in between, and they can't even do something as simple as Ethernet. And so this was an issue previously, right? You reboot, or sometimes like you game, you lose connection. Also like 2020, you use your PC and you lose a wired Ethernet connection. It's like you had one freaking job, right? And you couldn't even get something as simple as Ethernet freaking right, TM, right? So unfortunately, so there is a firmware update. So the problem is, you Google this shit and you find some forums of like, hey, I tried to flash it. I'm on Linux. I modify here, like download that. Also crazy stuff I didn't even know. I downloaded the bloody zip, and the zip didn't even unzip. Because even I didn't know. That's the first time I saw this shit here of, it's like needs PK compat version 6.3. And then what I also, so I didn't know that there are some PK zip variant that the open source unzip doesn't unzip. But I also didn't know that 7a does it then. So hey, you can unzip it with that stuff. So pro tip, 7ZA for the rescue. But the problem is, so what I actually tried, also you didn't easily find that, right? You need to Google the whole effing internet for your bloody firmware update. First of all, if this shit is buggy, then make this firmware freaking available on your bloody website, right? It shouldn't like that professionals need to spend an hour of Googling all the bloody forums of the whole freaking internet to find that. And then maybe also use a standard compression stuff, not some exotic modern Windows flavor, whatever stuff that you can't even easily extract it. But then that is a wrong freaking firmware, right? I actually added that in here, and only after like wasting an hour with this bloody bullshit, it's like all I expected was my freaking Ethernet to effing work, TM, right? But like 1 hour, like it failed, like some days later, some days and 1 hour later, this shit doesn't even work, TM, because so this Intel NVM flashing stuff, I overlooked that is a bloody freaking different. So in all of Intel's client Voxville Ethernet shit, in 2 years they changed it enough that sure, I could try to flash the old firmware, but most likely with my luck, I will not try my bad luck today flashing an old firmware on the new revision. So why Intel? I mean, sure, okay, you need a new revision because after 30 years of Ethernet, your 6th or 7th freaking implementation of Ethernet was so buggy that you need a new compatible revision. But otherwise, I would say, why constantly change your hardware, right? Like, can you not, like, okay, sure, bugs and stuff, but is it too much ask to have one firmware for barely differently Ethernet NICs and like have that compatible and not ever changing buggy stuff? I even found here some other download here, and unfortunately, even that download, so that isn't even newer, like 1 hour later, Googling all of the internet, maybe I should actually use an AI for that. So Intel Ethernet controller, i225 NVM release notes, and it's like, I was like, yay, I found, this was from some French, this was super hidden, right? This was like my cryptic Google stuff of only the PCIe. I found it on some French forum here. But unfortunately, what more? Also, that what is new? Also, like legal disclaimer, yeah, whatever, probably intellectual property and stuff. It's like increment security revision variable in CSS header, upgrade physical firmware to also firmware revisions, right? 4C08-8754. You heard your first fix. LMHW variant Mac firmware, whatever. Also, here's other stuff. So, what do they really change? Extended temperature skew, oh cool, device ID. So yeah, probably this will not just work. I guess they need also hard-coded device IDs in there. Bug fix for multiple issues. Also like, yeah, bugs fix multiple issues, but we will not really tell you which of those, but at least some wake online, physical firmware and etc. Like why should you, humble user, know more than, hey, we fixed some shit, right? You don't need to know more. Updated NVM to support B2 step. Yeah, so I don't expect just flashing that will work. I also will not try my luck. I don't want to ruin my hardware further. And you see here some device IDs of this. I was like, why do they need so many freaking device IDs? I mean, is it so difficult to implement a bloody Ethernet in 2025, right? But as you've seen here, I have a brand new, latest and greatest also failing bullshit. So that is 15 FD. And it's like, yeah, 15 FD is not in there. So the problem is Intel doesn't publish that, right? So for some other firmware, like enterprise firmware NICs, they have some firmware downloads. But for this clients, because obviously users, you playing along at home, you do not deserve a firmware download, right? And I have to say, last but not least, like one more thing. If you already know that you can't do network interfaces, first of all, don't do it. And if you already do it and for years trial and error and have one buggy revision after another, at least give your users a download. Because the problem is, I as an expert, not only did I still, after 1 month, I couldn't really use my workstation to its fullest potential because from the first day unboxing it, Wi-Fi, Ethernet was unstable, but even now it stopped working entirely, which, I mean, it could theoretically even be the Linux driver. I don't know, because I think, but I could be wrong, I think the Ethernet stopped working before I did the first BIOS update. So maybe something randomly corrupted, or the Linux driver, who knows, because the Linux driver has NVMe update for whatever reason there. So whatever it is, also the Intel, the Linux driver, before you say, yeah, but you bloody Linux, no, the Linux driver is probably, actually, probably should fact check that. All right, I rebooted for this bloody, I enabled the Ethernet stack in the BIOS in the hopes that it changes something, but it didn't. All right, without, also best without AT, and then I probably, of course I deleted that. But usually what I want to get to is, usually the Linux driver is blessed and implemented by Intel. So before you blame me, you shabby Linux, like, no, this is an Intel official driver, right? So last but not least, experts, so that is the sad thing, right? Even experts and kernel programmers cannot fix this now because they don't have a matching firmware download, right? All it needs is, with all the time-wasting frustration, all it needs is that the bloody vendors like Intel publishes their firmware for experts to fix it, right? So I mean, where should I get the bloody firmware now? Now I need to waste even more time and write an email to Gigabyte. They will not understand what I'm talking about. They might even want me to waste even more time, disassemble my bloody case, package this, ship it somewhere, have some weeks without bloody, it's like, sure, tell me, it's like, why don't you use Apple hardware, right? Because freaking just works. Like, actually, I'm live streaming from Apple hardware, right? But I had this with ASUS, right? Or I have this already. Each time I have some support things, the people don't understand. They tell me install Windows. They otherwise don't get what I want from them. They want me to ship the stuff. ASUS even wanted money. It's like you ruined your BIOS update. Like if we found it's not our fault, then you even need to pay our works. Like, no, I'm not going. At the end of the day, 1 year ago, I flashed with Linux flash ROM or whatever, I flashed the bloody firmware that corrupted, ASUS corrupted there myself. All right, they didn't allow download, right? The same shit with ASUS. The new BIOS was so buggy I couldn't use it, and the bloody ASUS BIOS, previous video a year ago, did not allow me to downgrade, right? So they wanted money from me to send it into ASUS for the 300 euro workstation motherboard, the X570 Ace WS. And I'm not paying bloody ASUS. Their fault, their new BIOS is buggy. They don't allow me to downgrade. It's like I should sit with weeks without board. I ship it to them and freaking pay them probably 50 or 100 or whatever they charge for handling of bloody flashing. Obviously, I'm expert enough to modify flash ROM and flashed it myself a year ago. So, and to summarize this kind of videos, I don't want to make this kind of videos, right? I don't want to sit here, Intel Spectre meltdown, software bugs, securities, like, no, I would want to sit here and say everything's amazing, but 20 years later and stuff doesn't work, right? The vendors ruin their experience, their personal computer experience themselves. This BIOS is unstable, the Ethernet is unstable, and USB also has some glitches, but yeah, sure, you could say USB always had some glitches, like USB was never stable. It's like, yeah, it shouldn't. Although I have to say, on the previous X470 and 570, USB I was stable. I didn't really had some glitches. The craziest thing of all of it, right? This is a brand new, my most expensive mainboard I ever purchased, 600 something euros, launch day, X670E edition. Lots of stuff that I wouldn't need, I never need. The previous most expensive mainboard I ever brought was the Asus Workstation X570E, which I also had these issues with. And I have to say, I recently auctioned from the Centaur liquidation that Intel purchased Centaur with their VIA Nano and stuff CPUs. So I auctioned myself from the liquidation the Centaur CHA. I still need to make a proper video, previous live streams there. Yes, it's not as epic thread performance, but this is prototype BIOS of unreleased Centaur stuff. I had zero issues compared to this random bullshit here, right? But yeah, I can no more, right? I was, even with Linux and open source, I was constantly joking. Eventually I have enough, right? 20 years of hashtag peakbugs, and I'm so done with it, right? I do this 20 years, and eventually enough is enough, right? And all those PC vendors would have to do is release just working hardware. I mean, like Apple's Mac versus PC advertising, right? Mac, everything is amazing and just works. PC, everything is broken, you constantly waste your time. It's like, yeah, those vendors unfortunately prove that advertising point. And I am a PC, I grew up with PC, right? But this is really too stupid for me. And I should also probably add that it is also ridiculous that in 2020 and years counting, soon 2023, that Ethernet NICs have so much hidden firmware that this is one or two, like I don't know why they have two firmware sizes, so 2 or 1 megabyte. Maybe if the vendor decides to only sell you like solder on the board design with 1 megabyte, maybe you lose some features. A little bit strange that you have both here. So whatever the difference is, maybe you don't get some other advanced management or virtual whatever networking feature stuff. It's not clear to me, but it is ridiculous, right? It's time wasting, ridiculous business bullshit. And yeah, actually I probably could just like, thankfully I have I have 2 dongles. So probably 2022 you use your Apple, not Apple, you use no name aftermarket USB-C dongles and PinePhone dongle on your workstation because Ethernet broke. Anyway, it's ridiculous, and that is the sad thing, right? I'm already not using the peakbugs that is otherwise macOS and Windows, right? I sit here with my own highly professional, one of the best Linux distributions, but at the end of the day, I'm plugged with the same nonsense that is the PC firmware, right? And that is what we Linux developers always hated since 30 years. Bloody, buggy BIOSes. And nowadays, there is even like more. No, we have buggy Wi-Fi firmware, we have buggy, unfortunately, Ethernet firmware, right? Wasn't it nice days when you had your PCI 3.com parallel, whatever, Typhoon something 3C509 or whatever, dash TX or so, that just freaking worked. TM didn't even have freaking firmware. But yeah, 2022, firmware and everything, hidden state, even in Apple's M1, M2, right? ARM processor and everything, from the graphic display coprocessor to even NVMe, right? And everything is buggy, and then you wonder that you have silent data corruption, random bugs, like you game, you lose Ethernet or Wi-Fi because, yeah, low quality software coming to you hidden in your firmware. It's ridiculous. I mean, if it would be high performance, I would already use my i5 Unmatched RISC-V workstation. It's just not as epic and thread ripping, and ironically that had also some PCIe glitches and USB glitches. So actually this Unmatched probably mentions that if I have high USB loads, the USB controller errors out, and if I use RDNA 2 or other newer AMD GPU, that PCIe stuff is also glitchy. So yeah, so much to open hardware and complex stuff, so complex that even that. But to Sci-Fi Hi-Fi's defense, the USB is it as media, and the PC, there's a PCIe switch that also as media. As media, also one of my least favorite buggy companies. Yeah, I can only shake my head and repeat, like, you had one job and like this buggy mess wasn't it. And it is also similar to Louis Rossmann and like, you can't have the schematic because intellectual property, and you can't have the firmware, right? Why can't we have the firmware for everyone to download? Why do we now need to beg the vendors? They will waste our time. They will not understand. They will tell me they don't have the firmware. Yada, yada, yada. I know it already. Yeah. So let's quickly look at the comments and then continue with our open source development. To deal with the stuff every single day, what's your secret to keep going? Yeah, I also my secret to keep going is that I started the YouTube channel, right? 3 years ago, or soon, actually probably 4 years. The reason I started the YouTube channel is that each day I've seen with open source, with my customers, with my projects, I see so much buggy nonsense that I thought, with Louis Rossmann's fan spin and micro soldering, I certainly could also start a YouTube channel talking about. And this is that Linus Tech Tips or Gamers, sure, Gamers, I mean, Linus Tech Tips sometimes talks about some bullshit, but sure, they need to run a multi-billion advertising company. Gamers Nexus, it's like more like, sure, I mean, I need to give them credit for Gamer Nexus there, Steve, right? Steve Burke or so, plus minus naming variations. I'm sorry, can't remember all names precisely. They sure shout out when NVIDIA or burning cables do. It's like, yeah, 2022, right? We have burning NVIDIA PCIe cables. But yeah, how I keep going, I mean, beside running my own Linux distribution that I don't, yeah, the hope with my own Linux distribution was I have a working Linux distribution. I just didn't account for all the buggy upstream software. But yeah. Also, someone says Mellanox is being preferred these days. They're going to buy anything from Intel. Yeah, that is crazy stuff, right? You avoid buying Intel. You have an AMD board, and on the AMD board, and the crazy stuff is the Intel NIC previously was even relatively okay, right? The E1000 or so, and now, and that's what I don't get. Why? I don't quite. I mean, are those managers like, except like golfing and having fun all day, like the usual C-level executive task of golfing and enjoying the office coffee or whatever. I don't get why, similar to processors, why can this stuff not be more compatible? Why do we have, actually, I could have checked this, actually I wanted to check this, right? This is why we extracted this, and then driver, net, Ethernet, Intel, it's like, yeah, freaking 10, right? LS of all of these, and then I think now I have Unicode characters in there, 12 apparently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, freaking 12. That is actually more, I mean, I guesstimated 10, or at first, what did I say? I mean, it's sort of in the ballpark, I guesstimate. But I also don't understand. My tiny little YouTuber's pro tip for big mega corporations: make your shit more compatible. There's a reason you have, especially at Intel, there's a reason you have your 8086 inherited complex instruction architecture, because people want freaking forward and backward compatibility, right? Why do you have 12? You have more freaking network controllers than you have bloody microprocessor architectures, right? I mean, counting your x86 line, your i960, your once ARM line, your Itanium line and stuff. It's like, why do you have more network interface controllers I mean, you could have like 3 or 4, sure, super old stuff. I get you eventually figure the shit we designed is too shit, we need to start from scratch. But 12? Why is a freaking heck 12? Is 3 or 4 not enough after like 20 years? And actually the E1000 was previously actually regarded as relatively quality stuff and the IGB stuff. But no, we need more server and client platform separation and bugginess. And sure, if you develop shit 12 times over, then of course you have 12 times the bugs, or even more, because the good old people who implemented the good old working stuff retired, and your new people don't know what they're doing. It's like yeah, pro tip, like don't implement so many completely different implementations of the same good old shit. Kind of missed what problem was there happens one of the broken steppings. No, it is a brand new, it's the newest stepping of this bloody chip, right? So new that even on the downloads you find, it's whatever the revision is. I have no idea what the revision is. What was even the name of, was it 7000? Oops. 7000 series. It's a freaking newest revision. Or it's so new that I don't find firmware for this non-working shit. Oh, come on. NVMe update. Ah, no. Oh, come on. It's such a new revision, whatever the revision is here, of FD, whatever, something. It's so new a revision, it's a new PCID. But it's also, it is crazy that the PC people accept this. I mean, I kind of am a PC people, right? I grew up with the 286, 386. I didn't even know Macintosh existed. We only had PCs in Germany, except an Amiga, like sure, Commodore C64, which we never had, Amiga 500, which we never had. I knew our neighbors had an Amiga 500, right? Or Atari ST. I mean, Macs were so expensive and unpopular that you had to be so rich that I have not seen a freaking Mac growing up in Germany, right? We had the 286, the 386, and then I brought my first Pentium. I basically am a PC, and I call this bullshit, right? I really don't get, after 40 years of the personal computer, how it can be acceptable that out of the box shit is so broken, and then you even don't get the firmware upgrade. And in general, where you need to go to your mother mainboard vendor's website to download this stuff, it's like, why? Because you don't even find this on the Intel website, right? Even for this even more broken earlier revisions from 2 years ago, why is this download not on the Intel website? And only on your board partner's website, maybe somewhere. I have no words. But recurring theme stuff needs to be more simple, right? People over-engineer this shit, they reinvent the wheel, and then it is no problem that we have bugs squared, right? We don't have bugs, we have bugs squared to the power of 8, or I don't know what. No, they did not only change the chip, the driver was somewhat working, the bloody device or BIOS update lost their NVMe non-volatile memory storage. It was glitchy from the beginning, and now it stopped working entirely. I don't even know how. The Linux driver, glitchiness by itself, other random stuff, or the BIOS update. I think though, I really think though it wasn't the BIOS update, because the symptoms were very strange, because I think it somehow destroyed itself, because I was already wondering for some days, I was already working over Wi-Fi, as seen on my More Life channel. So I actually initially thought it's a bloody Mac issue, because I was connecting the Intel NIC here with this A6 or whatever USB-C dongle thing on the Mac side. So this initially was obviously working because Ethernet compatibility. So initially, actually, it stopped working, and I thought, naturally, I assumed it's a bloody Mac's peak bugs fault, but only later I realized, probably rebooting. So I guess, as good as I can say this, Actually, I could grab my logs though, my Linux logs, because initially I was wondering why this bloody dongle didn't connect anymore, and I naturally assumed it's the bloody USB dongles and Mac drivers fault because at that point the Ethernet device was still there on the Linux side and just wasn't working. So as best as I can pinpoint and guesstimate, it probably somehow corrupted itself, I guess. Because only when I rebooted, I didn't have an Ethernet device anymore. And so before I rebooted, I had a non-working Ethernet device. So I don't even want to blame the BIOS update. And the BIOS, as far as I see, I refreshed the Gigabyte BIOS 5 times and it's still not working. So I would not assume that the Gigabyte BIOS touches the Intel NVMe flash, most likely. So I actually would say it somehow corrupted itself entirely, or the Linux driver. But we actually could check this when I got the first NVMe and volatile. Actually check them. We could actually grab all my log and see when this started. It's like the power of Linux, right? Let's quickly do that. Oops, why is this copy and pasted not what I wanted to? Also, this title case is highly unprofessional, right? I wonder how Linus Torvalds can allow this, that this is not Unix or Linux style, right? This is some Intel corporate driver merged into Linux with all the Intel like outsourced or overseas engineers having their funny title case styling. That is not Linux standard. I wonder how Linux reviewers can review that. So yeah, it's only started recently, and so it started December the 5th. And if we, no, I don't, actually we can further, if we could actually further pin this down either with my YouTube video, because I updated the BIOS after I made the video. I made some video of some sorts. Oh yeah, live on this channel, checking when you updated your own bloody BIOS. So 4 days ago, yeah, which date was 4 days ago? We have the 6, but we can grab for, what was the Gigabyte, if we grab for that, because that has the BIOS version. If we grab for both, hey, some super chats, that is amazing. Thank you for your donation, highly appreciated. So if we also grab for this, I guess that should work. Isn't it amazing, professional? I mean, I sometimes wonder if I work like more, like I have a more professional work method and setup than big mega corporations, right? If I watch all this failing random stuff. So we have here 58C. Interesting. I think I had 58A. So yeah, actually 5. So actually, where is my 58A here? No, actually I take this back. So while the Ethernet stopped working while it was plugged in, I guess the bloody BIOS flashing, it's like, yeah, this is also where I keep proper log files, right? Because here I had 58A. Also, by the way, can you do this with your Windows? Check which BIOS version you were running at which time. So, so I was running F8, did I say 5? F8A for quite a while. Then I flashed F8C, probably, yeah, for that matches with my YouTube video. So after all this bloody flashing, so maybe with some system stability, because this new BIOS is so bloody unstable that I had to flash it back and forth, right? So, but this still doesn't, I mean, it didn't instantly occur, right? So whatever, I mean, we still don't know what exactly messed up starting this NVMe checksum is not valid. That only started later with F8C. So did I flash this? Yeah, so I flashed this back to F7 and it was still working. I actually should have left it with, I didn't expect this. So I flashed it back with to F7, F8C, F8C, and this shit was so unstable, it constantly, so then, yeah, and so it, yeah, whatever, so it's not the BIOS update itself instantly, just general, who knows, some kind of whatever was so unstable that it clobbered this bloody non-volatile memory flash storage. I wonder how this could have happened though, but anyway, I also don't expect, so since this stopped working, I have here FC, F8A, yeah, so at least the BIOS is most likely not updating it, because, I mean, and why would it? Normally I wouldn't expect Ethernet firmware be included in a main logic board BIOS. But since it became clobbered and invalid, I flashed F8A back because F8C is such an unstable, unusable method. Even with the most conservative memory timing, it's not stable. So yeah, at least we know, I mean, it didn't happen much. We only figured that it wasn't the first BIOS update as it. So yeah, it's a train wreck. It's yeah, basically it for this video, and probably also a reminder that so much hidden firmware state in devices is simply also not the most amazing thing. And also comments there in their humble opinion parts of the issues. Also, those stupid specs are way too complicated and buggy here. That is true, and for sure, yet the companies could do better, not so many variants and incompatible firmware, and however that good. I mean, normally you would also think that under normal operation, even if your system is unstable, I wonder how this could be broken. Also, I wonder, as I said, even with the most, I mean, I wasn't even using it, right? It broke basically, I mean, because I knew already it was glitchy, I wasn't even using the freaking Ethernet, right? So basically it clobbered itself without me using it. It's not like there was like 2.5 gigabit high-speed traffic going through it. Unfortunately not, I wish it were, but it didn't. What I wonder a little bit is that the Linux driver has support. I saw that when I quickly scrolled over that. Here it has some release. I saw their update wherever that was. So the question would be, wait a second, here's update. Update the checksum, each word, then calculates the checksum and verify, and writes the value to the EEPROM. But the question is, why would it do that? I wonder, why is that even inside the Linux driver? update npm checksum. Where is it even? IGC. Update IGC. Why is this R2? Is it even used? I have the feeling it's not really used, to be honest. I don't instantly see that there. What did I even update checksum? But is this so they have nearly the same function in read the first word. If this time it's order fails, do not continue. Checksum register. I mean, maybe I could theoretically dump it. I could see if it's really zero, but I already tried to patch the Linux because obviously a professional here, not that helpless. I actually patched. Wait, did I somehow? Fuck, I messed this up. Darn it! So much to saving that. I had this patched. I patched this checksum away and a MAC address of 11223 and such. That didn't make it to just work. So I guess, I mean, I could maybe as the next step. But this is also, it's not my job to like do Intel's engineering, right? I could see if I update the bloody, like if it's not zero, if the data is still there for crazy reasons. Although I think the MAC address was all zero. Did it? Probably. Yeah, it's obviously not working. If it's all zero, the microcontroller on there doesn't work. But so yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks for the comment, thanks for the super chat. It's basically documenting how broken the industry is, right? It's another point, not only Intel CPU is broken, Spectrum Meltdown and all the variants of that, and Wi-Fi secure and stuff. And that's also engineering, right? We don't do computer science, we do like random best guess coding and hoping for the best. And that is the recurring peak bugs of the industry of people just clobbering something together and hoping it mostly works. And spoiler alert, often it doesn't. So yeah, comment there, Intel loves adding tons of outboard acceleration modules to those Ethernet cards because the processors are slow. Implementing TCP directly. So, of course, request implementing firewall-related processing, networking chips directly. Yeah, all the stuff we never ask for, right? So basically, yeah, instead of just working Ethernet controllers, you basically get a mini operating system in core processors that you don't have under your control, and hey, can also be security issues, right? You basically can have your security. Your hackers hacking your NIC. Yeah, it's set. That's what it is. I hope you learned something, especially how broken everything can be. Don't forget to like, subscribe, YouTube membership or Patreon and stuff, and have a good day or night. And I hope your hardware is not as broken as this one.